is conquer your karmic relationships. I'm here today to talk to you. I had a special request to do a session on how to sever spiritual cords. And for those of you who not really familiar with a spiritual cord, it's an energy connection that we've established with someone. We can initiate this line of energy across time and space through our emotions and thoughts, or they can be set up in our physical world relationships, platonic or sexual. It's important to know we don't always cord into everyone we meet, but when we do, we can think of them continuously and feel their feelings. These energy cords become uncomfortable as our relationship to the person begins to change. So I want to read a little bit, a little portion about spiritual cording from Conquer Your Karmic Relationships. There's an entire chapter about sacred sexuality and the divine. It's how we relate to our divinity in our physical world, in our physical body. And we do that through our sexual channel. And that sexual channel does so many more things for us than just allowing us to have children or gain pleasure by making love with a partner. It really is a way in which we communicate on the subtle energy bodies, which means our aura, our spirit, our thought, our emotions. It's a vibration that we connect on through our second chakra that allows us to have a whole other level of intimacy with somebody, even if we haven't gone through the process to have that level of intimacy with them in the physical world. So these cords can be lovely. It allows you to feel intimate and connected and close to someone, or it can feel dominating or dominating. There's nothing worse than being corded into somebody spiritually and you don't want that kind of connection or relationship with them. So anyway, I want to read a little section. It's on page 308 of Conquer Your Karmic Relationships, if you have your book with you. Now, people come to me all the time wanting to have these spiritual cords severed or changed or cut. There's a lot of ways that we talk about it. And no matter whether or not, no matter what you call it, the bottom line is, and this is what I wanted to read to you, it is the state of a person's personal condition and relationship to the person in question that determines how they move forward. It's a common misunderstanding that removing the spiritual cord ends the relationship. But that is not necessarily so. It can pave the way for each individual to change the karmic pattern that brought them together in the first place. So when we are spiritually corded into somebody, what we do with that is oftentimes we cord into people because we have a past life connection or a spiritual dynamic that is similar with them. We have a lock and a key that connects two people together to create that energetic or spiritual cord. And that leads you again to that profound sense of intimacy, that sense of knowing one another far more than your physical world relationship may imply. So even though you can cut the cord, I have people come and say, well, gosh, we cut this last week and it didn't work. It didn't take. It's because you have to change the dynamic of your relationship to that person. And if you are fearful, grief-stricken, sad, frustrated, angry, if you have any deep and abiding emotional connection or relationship with that person, that has to be addressed first. You can cut the cord as many times as you want, and you don't have to be in connection over directly. It can be over time and space, but you have to address what the core issue is. What is the core dynamic that connects you to this person in question, to the person that you're corded into? So that's the first thing to really address when you want to begin to shift a spiritual relationship with someone. Always when we connect in with somebody, there's information that we are getting. Oftentimes when spiritual cords happen, it's because one person in the relationship is taking on the brunt of the emotional energy. This is really important because many empaths who get who are deeply connected on spiritual levels to all things may have a tendency to cord into someone who is less emotional, and that either connects them to their own emotions, or it allows them to transfer their emotion to the one who's willing to feel it. So when you are corded into somebody, it requires a whole other level of personal authority and personal responsibility to really recognize and become self-aware and emotionally intelligent about what you feel, about who you are, where you're at, and then to recognize the other person. Who are they? Where are they at? What are they feeling? And learn to differentiate between the two. So if you are a person who is getting caught up with emotional cords, I just realized that I have the chat section covered up. So let me, so if you're a person, hi Sat, nice to see you. If you're a person who has spiritual cords with somebody and it's feeling overwhelming, like you're feeling extra emotion, you are feeling running thoughts, you can't get them out of your mind, you're feeling whatever they're feeling, you can't tell what you're feeling in comparison to what someone else might be feeling. It's really important that you take a personal inventory to see what it is that makes that connection. Holly asks, what if it seems the connection seems to keep changing from your side? Let me read that again. What if it seems that the connection keeps changing from your side? Okay, I'm not exactly sure I know what you mean, so please correct me if I got it wrong. You are saying you keep changing your relationship to the spiritual connection, but you still feel connected. Is that what you're saying? So here's the thing: we can't control what other people do. Yeah, I know. I wish we could, but because we can't change what other people do, we can change our relationship to it. We can release ourselves of any guilt, shame, or grief. Meaning if we have grief about a relationship that ended and we weren't prepared for it to end, or we were frustrated that it ended, or we didn't understand that it was ending while it was ending, like all of those are common, relationship denouements where there's this whole arc of the relationship ending, but we didn't really, we weren't able to really pay attention to it and be cognizant that was happening while it was happening. That means it's a relationship first with ourselves, our own self-trust, our own ability to trust what we perceive to be the truth or not. Then we have the whole element of communication. Oftentimes when we're spiritually corded into somebody, that is an automatic way to communicate with them without having to do so verbally or physically. So that's really important. What do we need to communicate to someone and do it directly, verbally, in a letter? Preferably you want to have a face-to-face conversation or a phone conversation, something that connects you in this physical world. Because every time you have those spiritual connections in their running thoughts, you keep thinking of them, you keep thinking about them, you keep having memories of them. If you will call them and say, hey, look, I've been thinking of you. I just needed to connect to you, because when you're really ready to talk in real world, we can talk, right? But once you make that physical world connection, it often relieves the spiritual or emotional connection for a period of time until it, resurges, which it will, until whatever the dynamic is absolutely coming up between those two people. So I hope that made it better for you. I hope that answered your question, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I can make it better for you, girl, but I hope that I answered your question. We have, I don't know why I just, this topic is so endearing on so many levels because, I mean, for so many years, I had multiple spiritual relationships with people that it took months and years to whittle away at the dynamic that kept me connected to them. And I realized at a certain point that you can't change what the other person does, but you can change your relationship to it. And it is your relationship to that energy, to whether or not it's your sexual relationship to them or your emotional relationship to them, or something that you have in common, or something that you wanted to happen but didn't happen, whatever your regrets may be, something that you did that you're upset that you did. All of those things keep us connected in relationships, and we will stay connected until we complete the dynamic of that relationship. And that's what we call karma, right? Karma is actually the reaction to the action taken. So when there's a connection or a conflict, an action and a reaction between two people, they're going to stay connected until it becomes resolved and becomes neutral. So Stephen asks, and if it's possible to, is it possible to reestablish a physical connection now? Hi, Paloma. That's Paloma. It's my cute little pooch. Okay, so you are asking me if it's possible to establish a physical connection once you have severed the spiritual connection. I think that's what you're asking me. So, of course, your physical world relationship must change. And I always recommend that if you can deal with somebody in person or at least directly over the phone on an issue, that's going to shift your spiritual and emotional relationship. Understand the spiritual and emotional relationship is there to allow the communication between the two of you to take place. So have that communication directly in real time, in this world, in this experience. Okay, no, that's not what you meant. So you'll let me know what you mean. We must become aware of how our energy impacts other people. And spiritual courting is the way that happens. So if we are, as an empath for many years, I've changed a lot of it now of how I relate to it. But in my younger years, I would be emotionally connected so deeply with people that I automatically had all of this information about them that they hadn't shared with me. And so I would automatically know things. And, that doesn't go over well in a relation, in a heterosexual relationship. That does not go over well. So, eventually what it felt like to me is that I had to pull back how I was relating to the relationship, and I wasn't able to really speak freely about the information that came to me via that emotional connection, which it was automatic. It wasn't necessarily cultivated or intended. And so it made dating a unique experience because I was already deeply involved on an emotional level because I had all of this information that didn't take a traditional way of being communicated. So if you find yourself in that position, that you've got to look at your side of it. Okay, so Stephen has said to me, what if you can't establish a connection to deal with that person? If they're, i.e. dead or lost. Yes. Okay, so we oftentimes have spiritual connections with people who are on the other side. And I want you to consider that people who are on the other side, they're not really dead. I mean, when you're in the grieving process, you have to recognize that they have left their physical body and that your physical world has changed forever because you're going to be without them in a body. But the truth is that you just change your relationship. The mourning process is here for us to change our relationship to how we recognize them and participate with them in our physical world, or in our spiritual world and our emotional world. So if you are dealing with a connection with somebody whom you cannot call on the phone, I recommend that you write it out. Write out what you need to say. Spell out clearly in writing what the situation was, how you felt about it, how you related to it. And if you have concerns or need some understanding about maybe you want further understanding about how they related to it, there's something that we do called an active imagination, where you actually get a piece of paper and a pad of paper and a pen, and you go into a slightly meditative state, take some deep breaths, and you envision yourself meeting at a coffee table with this person, and you ask them questions. Whatever you want to know, you write down the question you want to know, you ask the question in your mind, and then you write down the first thought or idea or picture that comes to your mind. What is their response? And you just write it down, and you just keep doing it. You don't analyze it as you're doing it. You just do it, and you get into a stream of consciousness as you do it. And then I always recommend that you put that away for a couple of hours. And then once you are fully in your present time, go back and read what you've said and what they've said to you. And that always helps a great deal to help you find a whole other level of understanding. So that, I think, answered Stephen's question. So Les says, you can tell them about my connection if you want to. No. That's the interesting thing. Being a spiritualist, any spiritualist's job, I know you're joking, Les, but this is a truth. Oftentimes people go to spiritualists because they want for someone else to do the communicating, because it feels more comfortable or safer to have a buffer. But the truth is, it is your relationship. It was cultivated at some point, whether conscious or unconscious to you, it was cultivated, and you must address it. No one can do that for you. Someone can be a facilitator of that process for you, which is different. But you have to have, it's your conversation to have. So like Les was saying, that he had, it was basically a clairvoyant and clairsentient. Clairsentient is when we channel, and clairvoyant is when we have visual connection. And clairsentient, sometimes we smell, sense that remind us of someone when they're present. And when you have those kinds of experiences, it's because that person is there with you, wanting to have a conversation, wanting to help you complete something, or maybe needing to complete something with you for themselves. And giving them that opportunity is paramount to finding harmony for everyone. I want to read you something else. Hold one moment. Because this has to do with our sexuality and spiritual cords. Our sexuality isn't only a physical experience. Often when we have a sexual connection with someone, it precedes having sex with them. It is this energetic channel through which we begin to relate to the multiple dimensions of feeling, thought, and perception. This sexual connection creates spiritual cords from one to another that keeps the partners in intuitive and emotional contact. The sexual channel brings far more to our lives than pleasure and children. It is our road access, leading to information on the spiritual superhighway that allows for healing and expansion on all levels. So when you are connecting with people and having these cords, you are literally finding ways to expand how you perceive life. You are connecting with another and their perceptions. And if you aren't comfortable or committed to your own perspective or your own opinion or your own ideal, you will naturally take on the ideal of another person and wear it until you don't, until you decide otherwise. So one time, and I'm going to get to you, Melanie, in just a minute. Hello. I had God bless her. I had a client. I talk about this, I think, in the second book, in Heal Your Soul History, which is this one. I talk about this dynamic in both of the books. which you can now get in the trilogy, which is this, in case I forget it later. But this gal came to see me because her boyfriend was just in her space all the time, 24/7. And literally, she was in the shower and she saw his face in the shower with her in the water. And it just blew her mind, and she burst into tears and, dried off and came straight over so that we could really talk about it and work it through. But this man was so connected to her, and he was doing spiritual workings. He was doing spiritual workings, focusing his intention, doing spell casting, whatever it was that he was doing it hardcore to make that connection to her, to keep her submissive to him and what he wanted. He wanted a relationship with her. He had always wanted a relationship with her, and damn it, he was going to have it. That's what he had decided. And so he was just laying this heavy trip on her. And we had to, it was a hard conversation to have. And it took us 3 or 4 sessions to get her to understand that she had the authority. Because up until then, she had a little bit of fear of him. He was overpowering to her. When she first met him, he was the warrior, knight in shining armor that she'd always wanted. She'd always wanted somebody to come and save her and make it all okay, until that didn't work anymore. So the change happened for her when she, first of all, was honest with him directly and said, look, you are doing these things and I'm not going to participate with it. And I'm not going to have any kind of relationship with you until you deal with that, until you can respect my boundaries and give me space. And if you can't do that, then we can't be involved. Right. And so the process was all about her. It wasn't really about the woo-woo part where he was connecting and she was having all these visions of him. It was about her recognizing that it's her body, her mind, her spirit, her space, and that she has to take authority for it, take authority over it, and be responsible for it. So that's how the change takes place. And every time you go through a process to cut a cord, that's what you are doing is beginning to really own your own space and forgive yourself for any regrets or conflict that you have about what you've said or done or been or whatever. You've got to find some peace for yourself first so that you can shift your relationship to these people with whom you are courted. So Melanie says, Ma, and it's imperative that we take the initiative and not hope that they do the dirty work. Yes, exactly that. Exactly what she said. It is about what you do. It is not about what other people do. I think part of it is that you really, you are the one that has to set an energetic boundary. And sometimes if people think that you can just will it away, or like if you let somebody treat you poorly, they're going to feel like they can treat you poorly. But not only that, other people are going to energetically see you as a target, and they're going to treat you similarly. And the way you shift that is to really claim your own spiritual space. If it comes to it and you have to have a conversation setting a boundary, then that's what you have to do, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter the long, ugly silence that happens after you've said something that, may hurt another person's feeling or frustrate them, or make them want to go away from you. That's the big thing. That is the reason why we often don't set boundaries, is because we don't want for people to get upset and then move away from the relationship. But here's the deal. If you set a boundary with somebody and it upsets them to the point at which they are going to move away from the relationship, they're either manipulating you or they're not for you. So they got to go. That's the important thing to remember is, you can set the boundary and let them go through the process to work through it and figure out a way to own it. Okay, so I don't know You're making comments, Melanie, but the no, no, and no, I don't know what that's for. So if anybody has a question, make sure that's it. Okay, so our sexuality, that's the one of the things that I wanted to address is anytime we have a sexual partner, we make that spiritual connection. And oftentimes that spiritual connection stays in place until we have deliberately shifted it for ourselves. So I want to go through just a really quick kind of a litmus test to discern whether or not you have spiritual cords. So I want everybody who's watching right now, I want you to just take a deep breath and close your eyes and ask yourself, who's corded into me right now? And just see their face in your mind or think of their name. And if you got a piece of paper and a pencil, write it down. Just jot down the name. You could have 1, you could have 40. Sometimes there are people that have hundreds of cords to them because they've never released themselves of it. So just take a deep breath, close your eyes, and ask yourself, who is corded into me right now? And then write down the thoughts coming to your mind, the faces, and the names. And then once you've done that, just sit it aside, and later in a few hours, after you've digested this conversation that we've had today, and by conversation, you listening to me, that's what I mean by conversation. After you've done that, I want you to sit down and look at each person that came up and ask them and yourself why they're corded into you. And then decide what you'd like to have going forward. And give them permission to release their spirit from you and for you to take your spirit back from them, because we can't have a cord that's not connected in two places. Right? So if somebody's corded into me, I'm corded into them. That's what I'm saying. So give yourself permission to pull your energy back and to give them their energy. And see how that works out. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. Let's see. That's a deal breaker. What's a deal breaker? So funny. I totally come in on after I've already spoken and it's gone right out of my mind. No. Melanie says that she doesn't want to take initiative, but you do. You totally do, because you're here. Look, you are you in particular, you are a self-motivated, focused human being, and that's what it takes. Doing our spiritual work is something that helps us find a peace that no one else can give us. That's a really important thing to understand. And going towards exposing the mystery that is your own soul is fantastic. It is magnificent. It is blissful. It is devastating on so many levels. It's all of those things all wrapped up in one. But as you shift up and shake up and create a little bit of chaos, it really changes how you can be effective in your world. It gives you a whole other level of focus and an ability to be effective in doing what it is that you want to do and having the life you want to have. It's the thing that lets you know that you are the authority in your life and that you have the power to do whatever it is that you want. And what I mean by that is you can't just do whatever you want, but it gives you the opportunity to make decisions and have a life that brings you joy and peace and empowerment, not at the expense of other people. That's the key right there, not at the expense of other people. Okay, so Stephen says, what about those folks you don't mind being courted to? Do they pose some sort of inherent danger? Like your first love that you just found again on Facebook. Well, here's the thing. I think, and the most profound relationships we have are parents or our children. Those are the cords that oftentimes family members, parents and children, we stay corded to them. But here's the thing. Anytime we are corded to somebody it's either empowering us in some way, or it could be disempowering us in some way, because there is an emotional exchange that we may or may not be aware of. So while it doesn't necessarily pose any danger, and it may offer an opportunity to expand your thinking or to reconcile something, anytime we connect with somebody on that level, that means we're vibrating at a similar frequency as they are in regards to whatever it is. So if you've met a past love and had this connection from Facebook, that means that you are reconciling something from that period of time that is still active in your life. And you need to ask yourself what it is, because when you release the cords from these people, it doesn't release them from your life. You get to choose that. You can choose to still have them in your life, but have them being autonomous and not taking your energy, or not you taking their energy, right? That energetic exchange, it's all fun and games until somebody gets an eye poked out. That's all I'm going to say. So remember, you get you get to make the choice as to whether or not you want them in your life. And you don't have to be corded in on that level in order to have that. So this has been just so much fun. Anybody else have any final questions? I don't think so. Well, I'm just going to put this bad boy up here. And I think I've told you that I'm the only one that has the Demon Slayer's Handbook series for sale. You can't get this anywhere else but me. So if you need to have one, you can text me, Facebook me, email me from my website, TraceeDunblazier.com. This week is the last week. If you want to get them out to people as gifts, you can let me know that, and I can send them directly to them. I send everything 3-day mail, which is kind of 5-day mail, almost 6-day mail right now. So if you have anything that you want to get to someone for the holidays, now's the time to do it. I think we have up until the 10th of December. So anyway, thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure to see you all as usual. And thank you for all of your participation and questions, because it really keeps the discussion going. So thanks again, and have a terrific weekend.